Oh my god, bro. Tomorrow it happens.
That SilkSong will be expanding its story with.
I just want everybody to know right now, okay? SilkSong is going to be Game of the Year. Period. It's going to be Game of the Year, okay? There is no question. I do not want anybody trying to fight me in the comments about this. It will be Game of the Year, period, okay?
It's no surprise to anyone that SilkSong will be expanding its story with a series of post-launch content. This has been confirmed by the Team Cherry team themselves. This news was pretty much expected, especially considering the immense love its creators poured into their first game. Even though Hollow Knight was a complete and enjoyable game, that wasn't enough for them. They continuously added new content, expanding the story and world of Hollow Nest, all while fixing bugs, polishing details, and balancing the overall gameplay rhythm to deliver an even better experience than what we got initially. And they did all of this at no additional cost.
That to me, place I work at has been preparing for this game to release unironically. Oh god, it's just gonna be such a good game. And like, just from what they said just now, it just goes to show, man, anything I hear about Team Cherry just surrounding Hollow Knight and SilkSong, I don't know their true background, but from what I understand about the team, they just care about making a great game, and they care about the players. You know what I mean? Like, you expect that from bigger titles. You would want that from bigger titles, but you don't get that. And again, it's just so unreal to me that this is considered I don't know if SilkSong, I know Hollow Knight is considered an indie game, but I don't know if SilkSong would still be in that category. I don't know how big Team Cherry has grown. I don't know really what the cutoff point is for something to not be considered an indie game, because I think it's like heavily reliant on the production team, or on the developer team, sorry. But if SilkSong is still considered an indie game, wild to me, because it just does not, Hollow Knight does not feel like that, and I know SilkSong isn't going to feel like that. It's going to feel like a AAA game. That's just my thoughts.
Their loyal community, and most importantly, showcasing their philosophy as developers, creating a constantly improving, fun, and above all, deeply passionate game. So we can confidently say the same will happen with SilkSong. We'll get a complete game with a vast world, an incredibly interesting story, and charismatic characters. Even so, as
like that the jumping just looks so butter. It just looks so smooth.
Team Cherry won't stop there. They'll expand this new world even further with an as yet uncertain number of DLCs and improvements that will give us an incredibly enjoyable experience through the lands of Farloom. With all that cleared up, I think it's time to move on to... With SilkSong's impending release, countless theories are swirling around its story.
That just looks so
all we
butter.
can do is wait until September 4th to find out. However, one of the most intriguing theories suggests that Hornet's new adventure is actually a prequel. There are many details and pieces of information that...
This is something that, like, I think people should also understand. The lore behind these games is wild. You know, for it being an indie game, it's like, you could continuously look things up and be surprised on what you would find about these games. It's really cool. It's very fascinating, and it just, again, goes to show the word passion always comes to mind. Just how much passion these developers put into this game.
Could support this theory, though that's not the main focus of this video. Still, we'll use this foundation to analyze the potential DLCs SilkSong could bring if it is in fact a prequel to Hollow Knight. Let's start with the most obvious. If Hornet's adventure is a prequel to the Knight story, we can assume that once its adventure concludes, Hornet will begin her journey to Hollow Nest, leading into the events we already know from the first game. However, this potential new DLC could show us everything Hornet experienced before her first encounter with the Knight. Multiple details hint at possible scenarios. For instance, in the special comic dedicated to Quirrell, we see his arrival in Hollow Nest via Howling Cliffs, eventually reaching King's Pass. Along his way, he encounters encounters Hornet and they have a brief battle. This DLC could make that confrontation playable, extending it a bit and allowing us to enjoy a glorious battle against this beloved character. Now, another possibility...
I just love how they're continuing to connect the stories too. Like, the developers recognize the success of Hollow Knight, and they're actively including the lore in with SilkSong. And I think, like, to a lot of people, that would sound obvious, you know, like, oh yeah, why wouldn't you do that? But, you know, like, easily you could make a game and not, you could make the timeline so far apart that it wouldn't matter. But I'm glad that the team is, hopefully from what we're going to see in the game, like, connecting those two stories so close to each other that it just feels natural. It just feels right. So that no matter what game you play, it's always fresh in your mind on kind of what's going on and helping you build the bigger story and just, you know, helping you build all those connections.
Of what we might see with Hornet exploring Hollowness before the first game is that they could show us some of the discarded content. This consisted of a massive expansion of the Abyss area, where the knight was born and where the sorrowful souls of his siblings lie. This was announced as a future Kickstarter stretch goal and would feature new areas and 4 new bosses to defeat, with access to this new area by descending into the Lake of Void. In this journey of Hornets, we could discover interesting details, possibly even where Hornet decided to hunt down the failed vessels, as we see in her first encounter with the knight. It's plausible that Hornet could descend into the Abyss, being theoretically a daughter of the Pale King and Hurrah, the Queen of the Weavers tribe. She could also descend into the lake by sharing an origin with the knight, though not possessing his peculiar qualities, as Hornet herself let us know. In this new place, we might see Hornet uncover the truth of the merciless experiments between the vessels and the void conducted by the King of Hallownest in his search to contain the Radiance. Upon learning this, more out of pity than disdain, Hornet might decide to embark on a hunt to end the suffering of the vessels still wandering these gloomy lands. We can infer this because throughout our journey in the first game, we find various corpses of the knight's siblings in many different places. Hornet might seal this place, exiting through a different passage that connects with Howling Cliffs. This would close a plot hole from the first game, as we know the knight was born from the Abyss, finding the egg from which he emerged. However, at the beginning of the adventure, we see him arriving via Howling Cliffs and traversing King's Pass, just as Quirrell did. Additionally, we obviously find the Abyss sealed during our journey, so he couldn't have exited from there in the first place. This would connect masterfully with the first game, and give us more information about the secrets still hidden in the desolate lands of Hallownest. All of this is just one of many options we can theorize.
I'm always amazed at how simplistic the game actually is, but how like there's a lot of contrast in the game in so many ways, right? From like the art style to, you know, the colors to some of the characters, but the cutscenes, just how you would expect not that from what appears to be such a simple game. And everything that you see and everything that you learn is contradictory to like the look of the game, in a sense. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but I just think that the Team Cherry did just a really good job at like nearly every aspect of the game of Hollow Knight, and I'm you know, again, expecting the same thing from SilkSong.
Since we don't yet know SilkSong's story, any option that takes future DLCs in other directions would be baseless speculation, simply a leap into the void. So, setting this idea aside, it's time to move on to...
Chapter 2, Sequel.
Now then, if we consider that this new adventure through the lands of Farloom,
it's always fun listening to fan theories.
The Knight's Adventure, there are a series of very interesting possible scenarios that a new SilkSong BOC could bring. While we can consider that everything previously mentioned could be seen in a future expansion, even if
I do hope, and it looks like that from the video, I do hope that in SilkSong they really emphasize her agility in the game, because that was something that was very prevalent in Hollow Knight. You know, like, I really hope there's like a sprint feature. It's not just like you're kind of walking like, you know, like the Hollow Knight. Like I really hope they key in on that feature of her.
Is a sequel, shown more as flashbacks. We can see our return to Hollownest in another way. It could be a journey after everything Hornet has seen in Farloom, having learned more secrets about her origin and ready to return to the lands where she was born with a different perspective, seeking to rebuild her tribe as the heir to the Weaver's lineage that inhabited Deepnest. This would further expand Hornet's origin and reveal even more secrets still hidden in the gloomy lands of Hollownest. This is possible because during the first game, while exploring Deepnest and venturing into the Weaver's End, upon obtaining the charm and exiting, we can see a living Weaver. Unfortunately, we can't interact with her as she flees when we approach. This implies that not being hostile, she still seems to be a moderately conscious creature. Therefore, it's possible that she, along with Midwife, another creature with whom you can converse in Deepnest, could help Hornet learn more about both her tribe and her mother Hera, guiding her to fulfill her newly discovered purpose and bring about a new birth and a prosperous future for the Weaver's tribe. Now, while all of this sounds very interesting for a potential SilkSong DLC, as it will continue to expand the lore of the Weavers and Hornet, I think it would also be interesting to delve into more outlandish theories. So, let's take even more risks and move on to
Chapter 3: New God.
While I didn't mention it at the beginning, returning to Hollownest after completing SilkSong as a sequel gives us free rein to speculate which of the first game's possible endings would be canonical. Each of these offers several possibilities and events that could be addressed in a future DLC. Everything previously mentioned about Hornet seeking her purpose while re-exploring Hollownest could be possible if the canonical ending is where the Knight defeats the Radiance in the Hollow Knight's mind. We know
I gotta say something, and if you're watching this and you haven't played Hollow Knight, I don't really know if this is a spoiler, but I'm gonna say it anyways. So I'm just giving that warning. If you're listening, and you haven't played Hollow Knight, maybe plug your ears. But I think was incredible about this game, Hollow Knight, is very one of the final boss battles that you have. You feel bad, like you feel bad about one of the final bosses. It gave me chills. It made me tear up a little bit. I was like, you're fighting this boss that also like wants to die, and they show that, and it's like, it's just sad. I've never seen that in a game before, like, I don't know, maybe they do that in SilkSong, but that was just something that really stood out in that game, like a very I don't know how to describe it. It was just like it touched my heartstrings a little bit, I felt bad. I didn't want to go through the final boss fight, but he had to go through it.
Hollownest, finally allowing a new era to begin and for Hornet to rebuild her tribe. However, this would lead to a more linear story DLC and information about the Hollow Knight world, but not so much a DLC with more gameplay and epic battles, which would be a more interesting path to explore in our return to Hollownest. So, despite it being good to learn more secrets and details of the story, we will discard this ending for now. We can also omit the game's base ending, which is simply achieved by defeating the Hollow Knight without having obtained the Void Heart. That leads us down the same path previously seen, with the Knight absorbing the infection, containing the Radiance, and only managing to postpone the inevitable for longer. Therefore, another possible canonical outcome of the first game could be the one seen in the last DLC of the first adventure, Godmaster. In this, upon completing the final Pantheon, the Pantheon of Hollownest, and finally defeating Absolute Radiance once and for all, two possible outcomes emerge. If we gave the delicate flower to the Godseeker before finishing the game, we can later see that after the Knight ascends as a new god of the void and tries to exit the Godseeker's mind, he is disintegrated by the light emitted by the flower. This leads us to the cinematic of Hornet waiting outside the Black Egg, expecting the Knight, and possibly encountering what appears to be the Hollow Knight, but this time freed from the infection after defeating Absolute Radiance. This cinematic leads us with an uncertain ending for Hornet, but we'll address that in a moment. The other ending of the DLC is practically the same, with the only difference being that since we didn't give the delicate flower to the Godseeker, it won't destroy us when trying to exit its mind. Therefore, the knight, in his ascended form as the new god, might be free in Hallownest, beginning a new, still uncertain era, potentially attempting to rebuild the foundations of this desolate kingdom, or perhaps being corrupted by so much power. This latter possibility would give us a chance to return with Hornet in a future SilkSong DLC, having to embark on a new journey, trying to find and stop the knight. Now in his form as the God of the Void, perhaps supported by the Hollow Knight, now free from the infection, reversing the roles and beginning a new adventure involving the 3 different beings born of the Void. This, of course, is nothing more than interesting theories and speculations that may not be perfect.
That's what I mean, man. I appreciate good fan theories, you know? Like, I could never do that, but it's just fun listening to them. I could never do it because I'm just not that big of a nerd on Hollow Knight, but it is, you know, it is fun to listen to these.
Come next in future SilkSong DLCs. However, if we stick to a more direct theory, one more line with what was previously seen in the Hollow Knight DLCs, we can consider that the post-launch content will solely consist of an expansion of the Farloom world, adding new areas, bosses, allies, and challenges. It's also possible that, just like in the first game with its first expansion, Hidden Dreams, the first DLC released for SilkSong could consist of an expansion of the Dream World. Perhaps it will utilize the initial discarded idea from the first game where we could delve into the minds of many of the NPCs we met, allowing us to explore each of their stories more deeply.
You know, even just watching this video, I almost don't want to start SilkSong tomorrow because there's so much that I missed in Hollow Knight. I'm only like 67% done the game, and I have the Void Heart edition, but I'm so torn because I want to continue Hollow Knight, but I want to rip into SilkSong so like today.
And understand their different perspectives on the world around them in greater detail. All these speculations are more difficult to contemplate, as we don't yet know what awaits us in SilkSong or what we'll see in the base adventure through the lands of Farloom. Trying to delve beyond the world we don't yet know wouldn't make much sense, so having seen multiple options for the possible DLCs SilkSong could bring, tell me what you think, and if you have more theories in mind, don't forget to comment on them. With the game's release so close, all that's left is to theorize about what we might experience in this new adventure, with the purpose of making the wait more enjoyable. So, until then, see you soon.
Wow, that's a good video.